The stars shimmered outside Horizon Station, a massive wheel of steel and light spinning silently in the void. For 10 years, humans had called this place home, a testament to their grit and dreams. Built far from Earth, it was a stepping stone into the galaxy, a proof that humanity could thrive beyond their blue planet. The station's crew of 500 worked hard every day, mining asteroids, growing food in hydroponic bays, and sending data back home. They were pioneers, and they knew it. Commander Lila stood on the observation deck, her dark eyes scanning the endless black. She was a short woman with a sharp mind, her black hair tied back in a tight bun. At 38, she'd spent half her life in space, leading teams through storms and breakdowns. Horizon Station was her pride, and she'd fight to keep it alive. Beside her stood Tom, the station's chief engineer, a lanky man with messy brown hair and a knack for fixing anything. They were watching the stars when the first sign of trouble appeared. A ripple of light blinked across the sky, then another. Suddenly, a fleet of ships emerged from the darkness, sleek, silver vessels with sharp edges, glowing with an eerie blue energy. They dwarfed Horizon Station, their size alone screaming power. Alarms blared through the corridors as the crew scrambled to their posts. Lila's heart raced, but she kept her voice steady. "Tom, get me a scan." "Who are they?" Tom's hands flew over the console. "Unknown signatures. They're not human, that's for sure. Energy readings are off the charts." Before he could say more, a transmission crackled through the station speakers. The voice was cold, smooth, and dripping with authority. "This is Vara, High Envoy of the Clitheran Dominion. You are the humans of Horizon Station. We have observed your presence in this sector. Your species is young, primitive, and unfit for the stars. Surrender your outpost and return to your world. Resistance will be met with force." Lila clenched her fists. The screen flickered, revealing Vara, a tall, slender figure with shimmering violet skin and 6 glowing eyes arranged in a perfect arc across her face. She wore a robe of liquid metal that shifted with every move, a symbol of her status. Behind her, Clitheran soldiers stood in perfect rows, their weapons gleaming. Vara's expression was one of pure disdain, as if humanity were insects beneath her feet. Tom muttered under his breath, "She thinks we're nothing." Lila shot him a look, then stepped to the comms panel. "This is Commander Lila of Horizon Station. We built this place with our own hands. It's ours, and we're not leaving. If you want a fight, you'll get one." Vara's eyes narrowed, a faint hiss escaping her lips. Bold words for a species barely out of its cradle. "You have 12 hours to comply. After that, your station will be dust." The screen went dark, and the Clitheran fleet spread out, forming a blockade around Horizon. No ships could come or go. They were trapped. The command center buzzed with tension as Lila gathered her team. Mia, a young pilot with bright red hair and a fearless grin, leaned against the wall. "So, what's the plan, boss? We can't just sit here." Beside her, Dr. Elise, the station's scientist, adjusted her glasses nervously. "Their tech is centuries ahead of ours. We need to think this through." Lila paced, her mind racing. The Clitherans had power, numbers, and arrogance. But humans had something else, stubbornness, creativity, and a refusal to give up. She stopped and turned to her crew. "They think we're weak because we're new to this game. Let's show them what humans can do. Tom, what do we have in the scrap bays?" Tom grinned, catching her drift. "Old mining drones, spare parts, some busted reactors. Nothing fancy, but I can work with it." Lila nodded. "Good. Mia, check the fleet's movements. Look for anything we can use. Elise, analyze their transmission, find out what they're afraid of. We're not surrendering. We're fighting." The next few hours were a whirlwind. Tom dove into the scrap bays, pulling out dusty drones once used to crack asteroids. They were clunky, outdated, but he saw potential. If I reroute the power cores and tweak the thrusters, these could pack a punch, he said, tools already in hand. Mia flew a scout pod dangerously close to the Clitheran ships, dodging their sensors with quick maneuvers. She came back breathless. Their ships have blind spots, small, but real. We could slip something through. Elise hunched over her console, dissecting Vara's words. She kept mentioning order and purity. I think they're obsessed with control. Chaos might rattle them. Lila listened, piecing it all together. The Clitherans thought they'd won before the fight even started. That was their mistake. As the deadline loomed, Vara's voice returned. Your time is up, humans. Prepare to be boarded. Lila stood tall, her crew behind her. You want Horizon Station? Come and take it. The comms cut off, and the Clitheran ships powered up, their weapons glowing. But in the shadows of the station, Tom's drones hummed to life, Mia plotted her next move, and Lila smiled. The fight was just beginning. The Clitherans didn't know it yet, but they'd picked the wrong species to bully. Humans didn't just survive, they thrived when the odds were against them. And Horizon Station was about to become a legend. The Clitheran fleet tightened its grip around Horizon Station like a noose pulling shut. Their silver ships hovered in perfect formation, blocking every route in and out. No supply ships could reach the humans, and the station's reserves wouldn't last forever. Food, water, and power were already running low, and the crew felt the weight of it. But if Vara, the Clitheran High Envoy, thought this would break them, she was dead wrong. Inside the command center, Commander Lila stood with her arms crossed, staring at the glowing blockade on the screens. The Clitherans hadn't attacked yet, they were waiting, letting hunger and fear do the work. It was a cold, calculated move, and it made her blood boil. They think we'll beg, she said, her voice steady despite the strain. They don't know us at all. Tom wiped sweat from his brow, his hands stained with grease from hours in the scrap bays. We've got maybe 2 weeks of supplies if we stretch it. After that, he didn't finish, but everyone knew. Mia, leaning over a navigation chart, smirked. Then we'd better hit them first. I'm not starving for some fancy alien's ego. Dr. Elise nodded, her fingers tapping nervously on her tablet. Their strategy relies on us panicking. We can use that. Lila turned to her crew, her dark eyes sharp with purpose. Vara called us primitive. Let's show her what primitive can do. Tom, how are those drones coming? Tom grinned, a spark of excitement cutting through his exhaustion. Got 10 of them running. They're slow, but I've rigged the mining lasers to fire short bursts. Won't take down a ship, but it'll sting. Good, Lila said. Mia, those blind spots you found, can we get the drones through? Mia traced a line on her chart. If I guide them, yeah. The Clitherans have sensors everywhere, but there's a gap near their smaller ships. They're too proud to guard it properly. Elise chimed in, her voice quiet but firm. If we make it messy, unpredictable, they'll hesitate. They hate disorder. The plan came together fast. Tom would lead a team to arm the drones, turning junk into weapons. Mia would pilot a decoy pod to draw attention, giving the drones a chance to slip through. Elise would jam the Clitheran comms with random signals, sowing confusion. Lila would hold it all together, keeping the crew focused. It wasn't a perfect plan, it was risky, messy, and born from desperation. But that's what made it human. Down in the scrap bays, Tom worked like a man possessed. The mining drones were relics, built to carve rock, not fight aliens. Their hulls were dented, their circuits outdated, but Tom saw possibilities where others saw trash. He wired in extra power from old battery packs, boosted the thrusters with spare fuel cells, and sharpened the lasers into something dangerous. "Come on, you beauties," he muttered, tightening a bolt. "Let's give them a surprise." Meanwhile, Mia prepped her scout pod in the hangar. It was a tiny ship, fast but fragile, painted with bold red stripes from her racing days. She climbed in, her hands steady on the controls. "If they shoot at me, they're not shooting at the drones," she told herself, grinning despite the danger. She'd grown up flying through asteroid fields for fun, this was just a bigger game. Back in the command center, Elise hunched over her console, uploading noise into the Clitheran frequencies. Static, garbled voices, even old Earth music, she threw it all in. "They'll think we're breaking down," she said, pushing her glasses up. Lila watched her crew work, pride swelling in her chest. They weren't soldiers. They were miners, pilots, scientists. But they were fighting. Hours later, Vara's voice cut through the static, smug and icy. "Humans, your silence is telling. Your supplies dwindle, your hope fades. Surrender now, and we may spare your lives." Lila didn't bother responding. She nodded to her team. "Let's move." Mia launched first, her pod streaking into the void. She darted toward the Clitheran fleet, weaving between their ships, engines roaring. Blue energy bolts flashed past her, the aliens reacting just as she'd hoped. "Come on, chase me," she laughed, pulling a sharp turn. The smaller Clitheran ships broke formation, drawn to her like moths to a flame. That's when Tom's drone slipped out. 10 clunky machines hummed into the gap Mia had opened, their lasers glowing faintly. They moved slow, but steady, guided by Mia's path. On the Clitheran flagship, Vara watched her screens, her 6 eyes narrowing. "What is this foolishness?" she hissed. "Scanners show debris." Elisa's jamming hit then, flooding their comms with chaos. Clitheran officers shouted over the noise, their perfect order crumbling. The drones reached the blind spot and fired. Tiny beams of light stabbed into the smaller ships, nothing deadly, but enough to spark fires and crack hulls. Alarms blared across the fleet as the humans struck back. Lila watched it unfold, her heart pounding. "Keep it up," she ordered. Mia looped back, dodging another barrage, while Tom sent a second wave of drones. The Clitherans scrambled, their sleek ships veering to protect the damaged ones. Vara slammed a fist on her console, her voice booming through the station speakers. "You dare attack us? You insignificant worms. Guess we're not so insignificant now," Lila shot back, her tone defiant. The comms cut off, but the damage was done. The blockade held, but the Clitherans were shaken. Their smaller ships pulled back, and for the first time, doubt flickered in Vara's mind. These humans weren't collapsing, they were fighting. Back on Horizon Station, the crew cheered, exhaustion forgotten. Tom slapped Mia on the back as she climbed out of her pod, breathless and grinning. "Told you I could fly circles around them." Elise smiled quietly, proud of her part. Lila let them celebrate for a moment, then called them back to work. "This was a start," she said. "They'll hit harder next time. We need to be ready." The station hummed with new energy. The drones were a small victory, but they'd bought time and proved a point. Humans didn't need fancy tech or ancient wisdom, they had guts, brains, and a will to keep going. In the scrap bays, Tom sketched new ideas, dreaming up bigger surprises. Mia plotted tighter flight paths, her mind racing with possibilities. Elise dug deeper into the Clitheran signals, searching for cracks. Outside, the Clitheran fleet loomed, their blue glow unbroken but less certain. Vara stared at Horizon Station, her arrogance dented. She'd underestimated these humans, their stubborn spark. But she wouldn't make that mistake again. She turned to her officers, her voice sharp. "Prepare the assault ships. We end this soon." On Horizon Station, Lila stood at the observation deck, watching the enemy. The blockade was still there, the threat still real. But her crew wasn't afraid anymore, they were ready. The Clitherans wanted a war. They'd get one. And humanity's hidden plan was just the beginning. The Clitheran fleet burned with rage after the human surprise attack. Vara, High Envoy of the Dominion, stood on her flagship's bridge, her violet skin glowing darker with every passing minute. Her 6 eyes glared at Horizon Station, a speck of steel daring to defy her. The drones had been a humiliation, small, crude machines that shouldn't have scratched her ships, yet they had. Her officers stood silent, afraid to meet her gaze. "These humans think they can mock us," she hissed. "Launch the assault. Crush them." Outside, the silver ships shifted. Smaller fighters broke off, their engines flaring blue as they sped toward the station. Weapons charged, ready to tear through metal and hope alike. On Horizon Station, alarms screamed again, red lights flashing across every deck. Commander Lila stood in the command center, her crew around her, faces set with determination. They'd stung the Clitherans. Now the real fight was coming. "They're not playing anymore," Tom said, watching the fighters close in. His hands were still black with grease from tweaking the drones. Mia cracked her knuckles, her red hair wild from her last flight. "Good. I'm tired of games." Dr. Elise adjusted her glasses, her voice calm but urgent. "Their formation's tight, too tight. If we disrupt it, they'll stumble." Lila nodded, her mind racing. The drones had worked once, but the Clitherans wouldn't fall for the same trick twice. "Tom, how many drones do we have left?" He scratched his head. 6, plus some spare parts. "I can rig them to overload, turn them into bombs instead of shooters." Mia grinned. "I can fly cover, keep their fighters busy." Elise added, "I'll boost the jamming. If they can't talk, they can't coordinate." The plan was bold and messy, just like them. Tom bolted to the scrap bays, dragging every tool he could carry. He tore into the remaining drones, stripping their lasers and packing their cores with volatile fuel cells. "One good hit, and these'll go off like fireworks," he muttered, wiring them fast. Sweat dripped down his face, but he didn't stop. This was their shot. Mia jumped back into her scout pod, the red stripes gleaming under the hangar lights. She'd face a whole squadron this time, but fear didn't touch her. "Let's dance," she said, slamming the hatch shut. Her pod launched, a streak of defiance against the glowing Clitheran fighters. She twisted and spun, drawing their fire, her laughter echoing over the comms as bolts missed her by inches. Elise worked her magic in the command center, flooding the enemy channels with noise. She layered static with bursts of random data, breaking their perfect order. Clitheran pilots faltered, their sleek ships veering as commands garbled. Lila watched it all, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Tom, drones ready?" His reply crackled back. 2 minutes. The first Clitheran fighters reached the station, their weapons slicing into the outer hull. Metal groaned, and a hydroponic bay depressurized, plant spinning into the void. The crew braced as the station shook, but no one panicked. They'd built this place, they'd hold it. Tom burst into the launch bay, 6 drones humming behind him. "Go," he shouted, slamming the release. The drones shot out, wobbling but steady, aimed at the heart of the fighter swarm. Mia saw them coming and pulled a sharp climb, luring the Clitherans into a tight cluster. "Now," she yelled. Tom triggered the overload, and the drones erupted. Fireballs bloomed in the dark, swallowing half a dozen fighters in blinding light. Shrapnel tore through others, sending them spinning. The Clitheran assault faltered, their formation cracking under the chaos. On the flagship, Vara's calm shattered. "What is this madness?" she roared, slamming her fist into the console. Her officers scrambled, reporting losses, 10 fighters gone, more damaged. "They're just humans," she spat. But doubt crept into her voice. These weren't the weaklings she'd expected. They were unpredictable, relentless. Lila seized the moment. Elise, open a broadcast, wide band, every frequency. Elise hesitated. They'll hear it too. Lila smiled, fierce and unbroken. I want them to. The scientist nodded, flipping switches. Lila leaned into the mic, her voice ringing out across the sector. This is Horizon Station. We're humans, and we don't bow. The Clitherans think they own the stars, they don't. We built this place from nothing, and we'll fight for it. To anyone listening, if you're tired of their rules, stand with us. The galaxy's bigger than one species. The message echoed, bouncing off relay stations, reaching ships and outposts far beyond the blockade. On the Clitheran bridge, Vara's eyes widened. Silence them, she ordered, but it was too late. The words were out, a spark in the dark. The fighters regrouped, their next wave hitting harder. A power relay blew, plunging half the station into darkness. Tom cursed, racing to fix it, while Mia dodged death in her pod, her fuel running low. But the crew didn't break. They patched hulls, rerouted power, and kept fighting. The drones were gone, but they'd bought time, and something more. Vara's perfect fleet was bleeding, and her grip was slipping. In the shadows of the Clitheran ranks, murmurs spread. A junior officer dared to speak. High Envoy, their losses are minimal, ours are mounting. Perhaps, Vara cut him off with a glare. Silence. We do not question. We dominate. But the officer's words lingered, and others nodded quietly. The humans were small, yes, but they were fierce. Could the Dominion be wrong? Back on Horizon Station, Lila gathered her crew as the fighting paused. The Clitherans pulled back to regroup, their fighters limping. We hurt them, she said, her voice raw but strong. They'll come again, and we'll be ready. Tom wiped his hands, grinning. I've got ideas, bigger booms. Mia laughed, bruised but alive. I'll fly anything you build. Elise looked up, her eyes bright. That broadcast, it's spreading. People are listening. The station was battered, its lights flickering, but it stood. The crew was tired, yet their spirits burned. They'd turned the tide, not with power, but with heart and cunning. Lila looked out at the Clitheran fleet, her jaw set. They thought we'd fall. They don't get it. We're just getting started. Beyond the blockade, the broadcast rippled. On a distant mining colony, a reptilian captain replayed Lila's words, his tail twitching. On a trading hub, a four-armed merchant paused, intrigued. The spark was growing, and the galaxy was watching. Vara's perfect order was cracking, and humanity's messy, stubborn will was the hammer. The Clitheran fleet loomed larger than ever, their silver hulls gleaming with menace. Vara, High Envoy of the Dominion, had had enough. The humans' defiance, their drones, their chaos, their broadcast, had turned her blockade into a galactic embarrassment. Her 6 eyes burned with fury as she paced her flagship's bridge. No more games, she snarled. Wipe them out. Now. Her officers obeyed, and the full might of the fleet surged toward Horizon Station, weapons blazing. Inside the station, the air was thick with tension. Hull breaches dotted the outer rings, lights flickered, and the crew moved fast to patch what they could. Commander Lila stood in the command center, her dark eyes locked on the screens. The Clitherans weren't holding back this time, fighters, cruisers, even the flagship itself closed in. This is it, she said, her voice steady despite the odds. They want to end us. We won't let them. Tom crouched over a tangle of wires, his hands moving like lightning. I've got one last trick, he said, grinning through the sweat. He'd spent hours rigging a signal amplifier from scrap, an ugly mess of old comms gear and reactor parts. If this works, we'll call the whole sector for help. Mia, back from her pod, wiped blood from a cut on her cheek. Better work fast. I'm out of ships to fly. Dr. Elise tapped her console, her face pale but focused. The broadcast still echoing. Someone's out there listening. Lila took a deep breath. The station was crumbling, but her crew wasn't. Tom, get that amplifier online. Elise, boost the signal, everything we've got. Mia, help me arm the last defenses. We hold them off until help comes. It was a long shot, but long shots were all they had left. The crew split up, racing against time as the Clitheron assault hit. Blue energy beams slammed into Horizon Station, tearing through metal. A storage bay exploded, debris spinning into space. The crew fought back with what they had, jury-rigged turrets, patched-up drones, even chunks of asteroid launched from the mining rigs. Mia and Lila manned the controls, firing wild bursts that forced the Clitheron fighters to swerve. Take that, you shiny jerks. Mia shouted, her grin fierce. Tom finished the amplifier, slamming it into the station's power grid. Sparks flew, but it hummed to life. It's on, he yelled. Elise punched in the broadcast, her voice trembling but clear. This is Horizon Station. We're under attack by the Clitherons. If you value freedom, if you're tired of their control, stand with us. We're fighting, for all of us. The signal blasted out, cutting through the sector like a beacon. The Clitherons pressed harder. A cruiser's beam ripped into the command deck, shattering a wall. Air hissed out, and Lila grabbed Mia, pulling her behind a console. Stay with me, she ordered. Tom dove in, sealing the breach with a slab of metal and quick welds. The station rocked, but it held. Barely. On the flagship, Vara watched with cold satisfaction as Horizon Station burned. They're finished, she said, her voice smooth again. A lesson to the galaxy, no one defies the Dominion. But then her comms officer froze. High Envoy, incoming signals. Multiple ships, closing fast. Vara's eyes widened. What? Out in the void, the amplifier's call had worked. A ragtag fleet emerged from the dark, reptilian mining ships with spiked hulls, four-armed traders in patchwork freighters, even a lone gas giant harvester bristling with claws. They'd heard Lila's words, felt the spark, and come to fight. A gravelly voice crackled over the comms. This is Captain Ruck of the Scaled Collective. Humans, you're not alone. The newcomers hit the Clitherons hard. Reptilian ships rammed fighters, traders fired salvaged cannons, and the Harvester unleashed a storm of drones. Horizon Station's crew cheered, their hope reigniting. Lila grabbed the mic, together, we stand. Push them back. Mia laughed, manning a turret. Now this is a party. The battle turned into chaos, the kind humans thrived in. Tom's turrets peppered the Clitheron cruisers, while Mia's shots picked off stragglers. The Allied ships weaved through the fleet, their messy tactics clashing with the Clitherons' rigid lines. Vara's officers panicked, their perfect order unraveling. Hold formation, she screamed, but it was useless. The tide had turned. Lila saw the flagship in the fray, its blue glow dimming. Tom, one more boom, target that big one. He nodded, rigging a final drone with every explosive he had left. Mia guided it, her hands steady despite the shaking station. The drone slipped through the chaos and slammed into the flagship's engines. A massive fireball erupted, rocking the Clitheron command ship. Vara stumbled as her bridge sparked and smoked. Impossible, she whispered, her arrogance crumbling. Her officers abandoned their posts, some fleeing in escape pods. The fleet faltered, then broke, ships peeling away into the dark. The humans and their allies pressed on, relentless, until the last Clitheron vessel vanished. Horizon Station stood, scarred but unbroken. The command center was a wreck, but the crew gathered, alive and grinning. Tom slumped against a wall, exhausted. Told you I'd make it boom. Mia punched his arm, laughing. Best boom yet. Elise smiled, her glasses cracked but her spirit whole. We did it. All of us. Lila looked out at the stars, now dotted with allied ships. She opened the comms one last time. This is Horizon Station. The Clitherans are gone. We stood together, humans and friends. The galaxy's ours to share. Cheers echoed from the Allies, a chorus of defiance and unity. Weeks later, the station buzzed with life. Repairs were underway, and new faces, reptilian, four-armed, gaseous, worked alongside the humans. They traded stories, tech, and dreams, building something bigger than before. Lila stood on the observation deck, watching a trader ship dock. Tom joined her, his hands finally clean. Think they'll come back? He asked. Lila shrugged, a small smile on her lips. Maybe. But we'll be ready. We're not just survivors now, we're a spark. Beyond the station, the galaxy hummed with whispers of Horizon's stand. The Clitherans licked their wounds, Vara's pride shattered, but the humans had lit a fire. It wasn't about one species anymore, it was about what they could do together. The stars stretched out, endless and bright. Horizon Station wasn't just an outpost now, it was a legend, a proof that even the smallest spark could burn through the dark. And humanity, with its grit, its heart, its unbreakable will, wasn't done yet.